Okay, yeah, thanks for coming up and I know that you don't want to be identified. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, I well, I do very important work, which is not appreciated by what you would consider the Illuminati, who has been harassing me for many years. So it doesn't serve any purpose for me to be identified easily anywhere in the world. So I mean, that's just anybody has anything really serious and powerful. It generally shouldn't really splash their face around at this time. It doesn't do anything for me. So that's why at this particular time. But I have a very unique background that people should know. Now, a lot of people have not heard of me, even though I've been around for over 50 years. I've been on the BBC, CNN. I've been in the Art Bell Show. I've written 35 books, 5 courses. I've been on many radio shows. TV series have been based on my life, like The First Wave, the character Daniel from Stargate. I mean, these are things people don't know about because they have my organization and me have been suppressed. And I've been the leader of the organization called Arm and Harm, the Hostile Alien Resistance Movement, where I've had contact with extraterrestrials and been given technology to stop abductions. Now, this goes back about 30 years when I had technologies to stop abductions, what I still do, particularly the gray aliens who were terrorizing people at that time in the late 90s and so forth. So this is physical technology that was given to me by emissaries of the positive extraterrestrials, by a woman who was I would call an elfin-type woman living in Sedona, who taught us how to make these devices, which are simplistic, but effective. And of course, that's what you would give somebody if you were a primitive Earth being. You wouldn't give them advanced technologies that they couldn't build. You would give them something that could work. And because of this, of course, I've been harassed ever since by criminal governments that don't want to save people. They want people to be abducted. And it's a very terrifying experience to be abducted, especially the children they take. They float you out of rooms. And of course, we fought against them for years with this technology. Now, this isn't some movie stuff where you're shooting guns. It's quite a bit different, where it's a psychic area where you're using vibrational energies, and they probably last 10 or 15 seconds to kick a gray out of a particular area using what I would consider hypersonic energies coming from a particular type of disc that we did. So I have a huge background. I've been around. I'm a researcher for over 50 years. I produce scalar onyx type, radionic type equipment for over 40 years. I've engineered it. So I have this huge background I was the first person to ever own in the history of the planet a radionic store in Palm Springs, California. For 3 years, I was the first to build radionic metaphysical equipment, publish people. I translated all the major ancient magical texts that we offered. So I have this long line, and people, of course, conveniently don't hear of me because they don't want you to hear of me. So now, we have to be very careful with extraterrestrials. The bottom line is that what do they give you? So, since we have limited time right now, we have to judge things. I mean, I like you. You're a doer. You really go out and do stuff, and that's very rare. You've translated books and you've done other things.
Let me go back a little bit. You invented a device that can prevent people from being abducted. Can you go into your invention, like what kind of device that is, so that you can help people to prevent this kind of horrifying experience?
Well, I didn't invent it. It was given to me by extraterrestrials of how to use it from an emissary. But I did meet extraterrestrials, and they're not very helpful, and they don't really like humans, and of course, rightfully so. But this technology was a simple one that was out there. Other people have used it and proved that it works. And it was being used for a long time, but you got to remember, harassment stopped me from making these things. And that's the way the world is. And I think you kind of understand it with your research into the Illuminati. This is not a game. you start producing power and they come after you.
Yes, especially in the last week or so, I was researching the voice to God or voice to skull technology, and there are a lot of victims in China too. Now, in addition to the ones I don't know in the U.S., so is that device also helpful to the people who are victims of this voice to God technology?
Well, not really. You got to remember, these are microwave weapons, directed energy weapons they're using against people, which are pretty scary. And they've knocked out a whole bunch of CIA agents who are now almost dysfunctional. And usually these are line of sight weapons, but they seem to be using a radionic type targeting device to get people. This is very frightening stuff, and it's very difficult to protect yourself against these directed energy weapons. But it can be done. You got to know what you're doing, and if you use advanced, what I call solaronics or scalarionics, which are very advanced pseudo, well, they're kind of similar to radionics, but much more advanced. You can pretty much do anything, but it is not limitless. You need lots of power to defend yourself against things like this, and it's very difficult. And it appears the government is kind of lost on this, but I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes here. But microwave weapons that the Russians have used against people just fry your mind. And it's really horrific what happens to these people. But, you know, the bottom line is they're helpless. And when you hear people that talk helplessness, you can find a person that knows nothing. I don't have the answers. I don't. Well, if you're so well informed, let's have answers. I don't need more terror that people want to do out there. And that's what I provide. I provide answers, and I've always helped people while everybody else seems to be a crybaby.
Yeah, I'm just very curious, like, how did you get into the field? What happened? Is it like a trigger event that got you into this field from
Well,
the
many years ago, well, I was involved in the study of metaphysics and had my institute in Palm Springs, California, which actually was researching all these things. And the 90s was a big time for abductions, and people came to me. I also lived in a place that was known for that. A few people understand that there's a place called Giant Rock, an integratron, which is in the Yucca Valley, which is a famous metaphysical area. And this area was loaded with extraterrestrials and a lot of activity there. It's also very close to a super large marine base. And we started to get constant people contacting us having these kind of problems of abductions. And people are frightened to death. Their children are being taken in the night. So we decided to get into this, and we're guided to it. Again, you know, a lot of things happen because you're guided to it. So we were guided to it, and we were contacted by people about these things. And I've been involved in the research of these general areas, moving in from ancient occultism and grimoires into the more sophisticated technologies. And this then grew to where it is. And the whole alien thing, which nobody believes in general and find it amusing, is a serious problem in the world. And nobody's doing anything about it. So we stepped in there and filled the hole. And then again, people approached us, or what we consider emissaries, who gave us technologies, but we had other contacts up there. And the point is, the technology worked, and there were reports on it. And then all of these things, of course, were covered up. We were contacted by press, who then made us look like fools. Well, this is the same old story. I mean, what's new about it? This is the way these things work, to make you look foolish, even when you have proof of things. But, you know, the common people out there know nothing. And of course, the news media, unfortunately, are as dumb as rocks.
Yeah. Can you go into the technology that they use to abduct people and also the device, how that works to prevent it from happening?
Well, the way it works is it put out and again, the simplicity of it is amazing, but you used a particular sigil, a sign, that you then put between special precious metals into a disc form with glass on top of it. You then used a particular psychic energy that was taught me how to do by the extraterrestrials to to activate this. Now, it looks ridiculous because we think you got to have a giant computer. These things put up a vibration that the Greys, who basically are not real extraterrestrials, they are actually robots. They're what they are. They are sent. They're what do you call it? Androids. They are androids that are sent here. But this disc put off a wave that they could not stand. So when they popped into your house, into wherever it is, and you had a disc there, they would start vibrating and then pop out because they come in on kind of beams of light and then they go back in beams of light to explain. So they can't stay around this disc. So it worked very effectively to get rid of them and stop the abductions. Generally, they're not going to bother you if they run into resistance. Remember, these are not warriors. These are, they're like drones that come in there to do a job and then leave. If they run into resistance, this is not some bad Star Wars movie. If they run into resistance, they leave. And of course, that's what you want. And they generally don't come back if you have a disc or if they run into resistance again. And this is again for the Greys. We didn't run into the reptilians or any of these other people in general. They were not that active in the 90s.
And for this kind of disc, can we still make them or duplicate the devices?
Well, we don't offer these anymore. We may make them in the future again. It's a complicated process, and it's difficult to do all this stuff. We don't really have the support to do this, but we are working on that with our new machines that we can produce the same energies. We also remove implants and other things from people. This is a problem, but we are working on that to reciprocate. Now, there are ways that you can dial in a scalar type wave that you can produce the same effects from. So you could actually put this wave out around your house or a person anywhere in the world and protect them. So we're moving on to the next level. But I'm not sure we would share the technology because of the fact that when it's shared with good people, the bad people get it. And you may or not understand. I mean, you've researched a lot of very bad people and even translated some book, which I started reading, the 334. I mean, you can see the kind of evil people out there. We have to be very careful. And we can't be giving tech out to these people. So it's a real problem. So what do you do about it? You share good stuff and the bad guys get it.
Yeah, since you're reading the 334 book, what do you know about the Illuminati? Because I know very little about them, actually.
Well, it's a complicated subject. I think people are misled by the quote Illuminati. The world is very simple of who runs it. There are lots of little splinter groups around the world. There's the Illuminati, the Masons, etc. I don't believe these people have much power. They may have certain influences to some extent. The world is run by the international intelligence agencies, quote, MI5, CIA, who've taken over the world, being pretty much run by their masters who took over, which are the Nazis from World War II. They brought them all in. The CIA is infected by them. Their guns and gangs run everything. If you think they need little magical powers to take, they'll show up your house with a gun and they'll blow your head away. They don't need some little ritual to take care of you. The kind of stuff when you hear people talk about that, like that guy you had on, this guy's a complete bozo. The point is, it's just not the real. All you need is guns and gangs. The police work with gangs that harass you. They have the feds that come in there. To think that there has to be. And of course, who runs it to the top of it? Well, it's the banks. The banks, the CIA, FBI, whatever you want to call all that. And they internationally coordinate with something. If you do something in Los Angeles, that'll be all around the world within seconds. And they communicate with every single so-called, I call them unlaw enforcement people, to harass things. So to think that there's all this things of rituals going, this is a fantasy to scare people. They're also involved in every deviant activity, massive child molestation, massive drug smuggling, and they just have endless money. I don't know why we need the Masons and other people to do what? To cast a spell on you? It's ridiculous. They want you dead, you're dead. They kill people all the time. That's why if somebody comes out and says, well, I used to work for the Illuminati. Well, why are you even alive? You're either a disinformation agent or you're a liar. because they can take you out in seconds, and they can do this remotely as well. They have technology to kill people using machines and everything else with these microwave weapons, etc. So this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So you're saying that the banks run everything, and who controls the banks?
Well, the bottom line is really what runs the world: money. Do you think any war happens because there's no money involved? Hitler was funded by American banks. All these guns cost a lot of money. Who does this? And they fund both sides against each other, so they make profits like they do in Africa. You go into Africa and you give the two factions guns, they fight each other, and then you go in and steal their resources. All the banks all do this. Now, who owns the banks? Who's ultimately controlling it? I don't know. It's hard to say. There's the Rothschilds. Again, the Rothschilds are Germans. Is when you get back to the fact is everything leads back to the center again. And it really goes back to the German quote, and it sounds terrible, but the German Arabic reality that we are facing here that's trying to take over the world. And, you know, I don't know if you know that Germans are not white people. They're Arabs. They come from Iran. I don't know how many people know that. This is not a racist statement. It's a statement of fact. Iran means, Aryan means Iran. Iran means Germans. So it all comes back to these people who've been trying to run the world with their Arab buddies. We have the Turkish who took over the Rome of the East, called Constantinople. Everybody ignores this. The last three major genocides are all done by the Turks, who killed all the Christians, the Armenians, the Assyrians, the Greeks. This is a problem, and they're all mixed in. As far as I'm concerned, the big problem comes from the Middle East, where is all those problems. And what do these people do? Well, what do the Arabs do? They kill Jews, and of course, Jews are just Arabs anyway of a different tribe. So it's not really all that complicated. You know, if we keep looking under every seat cushion for the Illuminati, to do what? Yes, the Masons, most Masons, they're judges, they're police, etc. Yes, they have local power. But in the bigger picture, the banks run everything, and the intelligence agencies threatens them. So I'm not sure how much of that is, because if they want money from the bankers, all they have to do is threaten them. They can kill anybody anytime.
But what can we do about it? Like, is there any way we can just prevent
the problem is that this is such big in scope. Now, we can blame the Illuminati. We can blame the bankers. You know who the bad guy is? It's your neighbor. He supports him. He's getting bought off. You know, 60% of the money in this that's going around in the world is all criminal based. You think anybody's living on their salaries? You gotta be kidding me. Yet all the expensive restaurants are filled. You can't get into resorts. Where is this money coming from? It's coming from all the elite, and it's coming from your neighbor who's spending it, who's bought off. So this gets back to a giant moral question. And there's a few warriors out there who stand up against this stuff, but very few. What can be done about this? Well, we have to change things radically. We're at the worst probably time that I've ever seen in my almost 70 years on this planet, with the fact that we're really the closest we've been to a World War III. And this can get very nasty, and it means everybody's life changes. And this is all part of demonizing the Russians. What few people understand is while the Russians aren't charming, they won 2 wars. And if it wasn't for the Russians, we would not have won World War II or World War I or defeated Napoleon. So demonizing the Russians is important, because that's the way they have the Germans are going to stop the takeover of Europe, which of course the Americans are the biggest dumb idiots in the world. So this is all the manipulative game that goes on, which is quite fascinating, but very dangerous. So how do we change all this? Well, it's going to be, people have to wake up to what's going on, but people like their comfort, and they're not willing to fight for anything. We need strong leaders, and we don't really have it. As much as Trump isn't a great man, we need somebody that the world fears, and it's certainly Trump they do. But we need somebody with a strong hand that's going to talk to these people, and they will follow it in a big thing. We have a giant group of people now that are against the United, and rightfully so. The United States has been up to nothing but bad for the last 50 years.
Yeah, I know you have experienced a lot of things happening to you personally. Like, how did they harass you when you, like, at what stage do you think that they
Well,
started?
I could give you stories. I had a very successful business making $50,000 gross a month, and they made sure they came in when I had my institute in Palm Springs. They came in and defrauded me, and then they brought me into court and they destroyed that. They murdered my mother in a hospital. That's how bad it is. And don't think that's happened. Your police and your doctors murder people every day. The police had the local criminals run cars into my family and put them in the hospital. My mother went through a heart operation. They murdered her. This is serious stuff, man.
Like, for what reason? What do you think why they did this?
What was that?
Why do you think that they did this to your family?
Well, because I have the technology and working against them. They don't want it exposed.
You
All
mean
of these
the
things they don't want exposed.
you mean
The
the
entire
anti-abduction?
industry that I'm in has been all taken over by Satanists, which openly state they're Satanists and then talk about, quote, radionics. When I was very popular, they pushed in a guy called Carl Wells, who was a self-admitted Satanist. This is serious stuff. They are doing evil, horrid stuff. They are raping children and using them for that. This is not a game. So, and anybody who comes up against them, they're going to go after you. And they own the military and the police, and that's the way the world works. So they go after you. In fact, the miracle is that I'm still here, period. So,
Who do you think is on top of all this? Like, who is the top, the president or the board of the Satanist organization?
well, it's very interesting because they work with the police and say, you got to remember all of these people are together and they use them. Your local police use all the gangs that they claim are the criminals that they work with. I was followed by the local gangs in Palm Springs, California, all the Mexican gangs. I saw them go into pain doctors and get narcotics. They worked with everybody. I saw, and I know this sounds crazy, and if people don't go through it, I wouldn't have believed this myself unless I went through it. I'd say, you're a paranoid nut. What's wrong with you? They own everybody. They walked into Walmarts with gangs and took it over. They did that with Costco and other places. This is the kind, people have no idea the level of this. I know it sounds crazy, but this is what they do because the police run the local. But they don't do it themselves. They're not going to follow you around. They have to pretend they're cops. So they take which were the large Mexican gangs, which are everywhere in Southern California. They took the 13th Street gang, and those people were following me all the time. They would do everything from, they would have signal changers like the fire department has. And if you went through that, they would push the red light. I mean, these are the kind of things that people have no idea to the level of this. And they kill people all the time. And they kill, the doctors assist them. They do all sorts of things. They go in, of course, a lot of people are paid off. And I'm assuming there's also threats involved. This is how bad it is. And nobody talks about this because they just think it's crazy or not. This is the real world.
Are you currently in the US or in Europe?
What's that?
Are you currently in the US or in Europe?
No, I'm not. I am now living in Europe, of course, in the hotbed of evilness called Deutschland.
I was wondering about that actually.
As you can get. I got two people living in my apartment building here that wear black uniforms. And the only thing they don't do is because it's illegal. But the local, all the police, the German police now wear black uniforms in general. They are as Nazi as they were to begin with. This is a serious problem. And of course, I'm trying to move to other places, but where do I go? And the reality of it, all of Europe has turned fascist. We can look at the UK. Ireland's not any better. All the countries are like that. So it's one of those things.
But do you speak the local language to get by, or do you just speak English?
Well, no, I was trying, learning German is difficult, but why am I going to learn German to talk to these Nazis? What? So I don't have any interest. My activity is to get the hell out of here as soon as I can.
I see.
But there's no reason to talk to these people. The Germans have the worst personalities on the planet. They are evil, rotten people, and it's as simple as I have no interest in them. Unfortunately, I married one. But the point is that, and that's why I ended up here for several things. But they chased me out of the United States,
I
and
see.
after causing all sorts of problems.
But yeah,
Thinking that this may be a little more independent a place, but there is no independent place.
just
They
let you
have
know,
fascist laws in the
yeah.
UK. Ireland is very fascist. They're putting people in jail for almost everything there. There's no free speech anywhere. But that's the reality of it.
Yeah, just to
But
let you
learning
know.
German is hard. I'm old. It's hard to learn a
Oh,
language.
oh, I know, I know. Just to let you know, I'm going to be going to Frankfurt in October to attend the book fair, and
Right.
you said you wrote 30 something books,
Yeah, I wrote over 35 books. You can
35.
go on Amazon.com, which publishes all my books, punch in Dr. Thor, and they will all come up. So I have all these books written there on mostly metaphysical subject matter, but all these kind of things that help you change your life by using different technologies and things to increase your prosperity and protect yourself. So you can look them up all there.
One thing I have a question is about the human energy fields, the auras. I heard that the radionics can really kind of detect or maybe kind of
Well, you
sense.
can. You can do it. You can do anything with radionics if you know what you're doing, have the right equipment. Now, checking energy fields are not really new. Um, I'd like to see you translate some classic Chinese texts who are so good at this. They have chi masters. I've met many of them that can hit you at a distance, that can move the chi through you. And I've personally felt this. It's quite amazing. Um, so the whole idea is the energy fields of the auras around the body, and they have things like aura cameras and I'm not a big fan of them because what they're doing is taking poor data and converting it into what the computer says. But it's probably a good place to start if you want to look at things electronically. Now, aura cameras have been out there for 30 years. Now, there are ways to analyze all the auras and work from that as well. And you can do that. It's not easy. You got to be a skilled person to do it. But there's different auras, how they affect. These are connected to the chakras and all the other things. You can measure the intensity. You can clear up any blockages. You can do all this with this kind of very advanced technology, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to have good equipment to do it with. So it's not a
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 thing. There are a lot of books on the aura out there that talk about the colors and everything else.
Yeah,
So I mean, it's not exactly a field that has not been known.
I
So
read I read a lot of the books. Actually, I'm trying to develop something that is more accurate in projecting the colors of the auras. The current aura camera on the market is not that accurate according to a lot of the aura readers. So I'm trying to develop something that doesn't need you to put a hand on the sensor. So it's acting like a real camera to capture the auras of a person. Uh, how should we go about this? Like to develop
well, you're
something.
100% correct.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of this digital stuff because it's kind of a con game. It looks cool. You get this little picture, and I've had these for years at New Age fairs, but I don't have any faith in it whatsoever. Now, it's very there. See, the problem is you got to understand that there is no technology that can grab this. There are no cameras or everything else. These are energy fields which mostly you would call scalar, meaning non-electromagnetic. So if they're non-electromagnetic, all of our science is worthless. So how do you measure it? Well, you have to measure it through very difficult ways and through very advanced people who can use pendulums and radionic. These are conscious. Radionics machine is a consciousness machine. There's nothing electronic about it. You can make it more like I do now because I'm trying to use modern electronics to do this better. But the measuring auras science, so-called science, it doesn't exist. These are not. We don't know how to do it because we put no money into it. Now, if I had $10 million, I'm sure that I could figure out how to do all this stuff. But the minute you get into the electromagnetic, all of these energy fields and everything else are meaningless because there's very little electromagnetic when you really get into it. They want to say your body's electromagnetic in a way, but your auras and everything else, you're never going to detect this stuff using any kind of equipment that I'm familiar with. A lot of people make claims. As far as I'm concerned, they're a bunch of liars. They claim they're machines that do this and they can tell you everything by putting your hand on. This is biofeedback information, which is dubious at best. Nobody tests it. They want to sell you very expensive equipment that really has nothing behind it but what the salesman tells you. So it's a difficult area to actually research. And then how do you measure all these things? Well, the first thing you ought to do is learn how to become extremely proficient using pendulums. Pendulums and equipment connect. Now, you can say that pendulums are unscientific, but they really are used by a professional. So if you turn yourself off and don't affect what you're trying to read, pendulums are fantastic, and they can tell you almost everything and read because they're sensing things through millions of miles of your nervous system to decipher these energy fields around you, the chakras, the energy fields, etc. So this is a real problem, and we've never really moved ahead because nobody's really interested in doing it in a serious fashion. So it's very difficult.
I see. Yeah, I'm going to look into this just to see if there's a way we can measure or just to capture the scalar energy or auric fields. On your website, you mentioned that you have a lot of products that you're looking for people to assemble the products. Have you ever thought about outsourcing that to another country to do it?
Yeah, we're working on that stuff, and we are considering doing that. One of the problems is that there is not we're always looking for qualified builders and people that know something, which is virtually nobody. And nobody is dependable, and all the bad guys get to them. I've lost close to $50,000 on frauds that come to me by the Illuminati, to use a term, that then defraud me. That I figured ways to stop that now, but it could be. The problem is there's not a big enough market at this time. At least I can't get to it. Now, people are claiming to sell lots of these products. Now, I believe that the greatest need for mankind right now is manifesting technologies. Now, I think everybody should have a phone, everybody should have a computer, everybody should have a manifesting machine. Now, a manifesting machine brings to you, this is really the ultimate science. AI creates stuff, but it's all very bogus stuff to a degree, or at least it's interesting. But what you really need in your life is to manifest what you want, whether that's health or wisdom or prosperity. So you need to empower what you're doing. And you can do that with a manifesting machine, which will take your thought forms, increase the energy of them, and project them out. Then you start seeing manifesting. Now, this, I believe, is the greatest technology possible on the planet. And everybody should own some sort of manifesting machine so that they can empower what they're doing in their life, especially now with all the problems we're having. So I think that'll be the greatest revolution, but it's very difficult to kick this off and to get people interested in general. But everybody should have that tech so they can vent. People that do use this tech that I offer do quite well in life. Their success rates skyrocket and things come to them. They start getting the better jobs. They start having greater success. So everything you do, you ought to empower. You want to invest in Bitcoin or whatever? Well, empower that. Empower yourself. You want to keep your auras very strong so you keep illness away. Empower that. And that's all about the manifesting technology, which is here today, but is ignored. But, the whole idea is to ignore this. The whole idea is to marginalize people like me so the word doesn't get out. And of course, that's what they've done on YouTube and everything else. This is marginalizing people so the word doesn't get out. And of course, people directly then mess with you as well. But those are the type of things. But the whole idea is it's easy to go to manufacturers somewhere else, but you're going to have to produce large sales. There isn't large sales. Well, I do okay. There isn't thousands of units being sold a month. And that's what you have to do if you're going to outsource this to other manufacturers.
Great, great. Thank you so much. And next time we are going to go in depth about the manifesting machine that you developed. And thank you so very, very much for today. And let's keep in touch and see you next time.
Okay, good talking to you as well. Let's try and
My
stay in
pleasure.
touch.
Thank
You
you.
take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.